Hello there, Internet. I'm reviewing this book, Dark Matter. This is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, which I kind of hate this title. And the only reason I hate it is the TV show also called Dark Matter that I was a fairly big fan of, which means that now it's really hard to talk about either without it being unclear which one you're talking about, and they're not related. They're not connected in any way. One of them is a book, one of them's a TV show, one's a space opera sci-fi, one of them is a more grounded contemporary sci-fi. Very, very different franchises that have nothing to do with each other. Nothing in common other than the name. Slightly annoying, but doesn't matter. Anyway, I mentioned that I am going to be giving away a copy of this at the end of this review. So if you're interested in winning a copy of this, all you have to do is either comment below or send me a PM on YouTube stating that you're interested in winning. Join the Discord, which will be linked in the which will be linked in the description below. The Discord server is freely available for anyone to join, and all you need to do is be active enough that I notice that you're there. You don't have to be on there, 24 hours a day. Just show up, say hi, have a conversation every now and then. Even if you only log in every couple of days, just have a little bit of a chat. The whole point is to build the community. So that's all you have to do to be in to win a copy of this book. So what did I think of this book? Well, this has been getting rave reviews, and for good reason. It is a well-written and stable sci-fi staple. It's very Crichton-esque in the way it's been written. If you don't know who that is, Michael Crichton wrote some of the most famous non-space-based sci-fi that you can think of, such as Jurassic Park. This has a very similar feel. It follows a character, Jason Dessen, and he is a perfectly normal, everyday guy. The whole purpose of this book is to explore the concept of alternate realities, alternate timelines, and whether or not you can change your present, your future, and what that entails. It explores these concepts in a very different way than a lot would expect. It's not just hopping from reality to reality. There are a few little twists and turns and a few logical leaps made by this book that I found really, really entertaining. I will say, for the layperson, this will be a thrilling and exceptional idea of the multiple worlds theory and the multiple dimensions concept in science fiction. For someone who is a little more scientifically minded, this is going to be a little bit predictable, and it's going to be a little slow going. The first few chapters, especially, I'd say maybe the first third of the book, seems to take time explaining its concepts, and the main character takes a lot more time making realizations that I feel the reader is likely to make before the character, and as the character is portrayed as being a scientifically minded person who is an expert in his field, he should be making these logical leaps faster. You may not notice this if you're not up on theoretical physics. If you're not even casually aware of theoretical physics, then you probably won't notice any pacing issue at all, which is fine. It's probably better that it does that for the average reader. For someone like myself, who has basic college education in the subject, though I'm far from an expert, I don't have a degree in the subject, I have basic college education in the subject, I found that I was already making the logical leaps the character was making, and I was making them a chapter before he was. And that makes him feel a little bit dim-witted from my perspective. Your mileage will likely vary. Other than that, the concept is fascinating. The build-up works well, whilst it's slow towards the Well, it's slow towards the beginning, the middle picks up, and then it takes a swing at about the 2/3 mark, where it does stuff I wasn't expecting, which was a nice and refreshing turn. I was also quite impressed at how much the book focuses on a romance without sacrificing the sci-fi element. A major conceit of the book is that the main character is focused on his wife. There is a big issue with him getting back to his old life, his old experience, because he does not wish to lose his wife and his family. He loves his wife, he loves his family, and that's what's keeping him going. Which means there is a lot of focus on that relationship. And in that regard, there is a romance element to the book that I felt was very natural. It did occasionally make him act illogical and was a little reductive, and distracted a little from the scientifically minded methods that he should have been going through in some of the decision making he did. Maybe that's simply a flawed character rather than a missed opportunity, but I did find there were a few missed opportunities in this book. Ultimately, the plot is well written, the characters are entertaining. I thoroughly enjoyed what I read. I don't think that it's a masterpiece, but I do think that it is a staple of contemporary science fiction, and if you're someone who reads contemporary novels and wants to dip their toe in the water of science fiction, you could not start with a better novel than this. This is exactly what you're looking for. It's not going to drown you in scientific jargon, but it's going to feel outlandish and fresh enough. It's going to play with concepts of theoretical physics and quantum mechanics that you're perhaps not overly familiar with and will feel as if it's sweeping you along. But honestly, what it's doing is fairly simple, and you should be able to grasp it easily enough. You don't need to have a knowledge of the subject to understand the plot. The prose itself is very utilitarian. There are no issues with the prose. The writing is perfectly normal. It just fits. There's no issue really with the way that he puts the sentences together. I would argue that if anything, they feel a little bit flat. There's no big descriptions. There's no poetry to the writing. And that's perhaps an issue. One downside to this, I think, is it is first person, and as you go through, you'll realise that being in the guy's head is a storytelling element and a creative choice, which works fine because it allows him to be thinking aloud. When it comes to the book, without the clunkiness of trying to describe how he looks or what he might be thinking. He can simply think out loud because you're in his head, you're experiencing it from his perspective. That's a good move. That helps. You are following one character for the entire book, so there's no issue there. I tend to prefer third-person perspectives, as there is an issue with first person in that you can't have things happening outside of what that person perceives and what that person experiences. You also can't put that person in any mortal danger. You can't have them be asleep or unconscious at any point in the story because they can't perceive when they're in those states. It puts limitations on where the story can go, and it also prevents you from doing certain things that tend to make books more fleshed out and more immersive. However, I would say the latter quarter of this book benefits heavily from being in first person because of an element of the story which would be a spoiler to reveal that only really works because you're in his head. So I would say that is probably a benefit. Overall, as a creative choice, first person I think was the correct choice for this book. It's not my favourite, but it is the best way to tell this story. It also means if you're coming from YA, for example, where the vast majority of YA books are written in the first person, this is going to be an extremely easy read because it's going to read like books you're familiar with. That's going to be a benefit, I think. That's going to encourage more people to carry on and dig deep into an adult sci-fi story. So, very much recommend this. That's probably all I'd want to say without going into any spoilers. I don't want to talk about what principle exactly it's touching, other than that it's multiple worlds. If I go into any more details, I think it would be a spoiler, and I don't think that revealing any of the spoilers would actually benefit this book. Now, as for length, this book is 401 pages long, and looking in the book here, we have standard size font, so around 11 words per line, and and 31 lines per page. Now, we take off around 10% of that for the fact that pages are going to have less on them when you've got, say, only a half page. I would also say, when it's dialogue heavy, which this book is actually surprisingly dialogue heavy, you can also take off about 20% of that. And going through this, you'll see what I mean. If you flick through this and then flick through a high fantasy book, you'll see that most of the lines are half lines. Most of them are dialogue lines. Very, very rare do you have a block text page. So, what you end up with, really, is around, and I'd say 20% is probably even then not enough to judge just how short a book can be when you change the writing style. Being dialogue heavy and short sentenced with more paragraph breaks makes a big difference. So, what we actually have is, instead of the approximately 340 words per page, you take off around 34 for page breaks. You take off another, I'd say, 60 to 90 per page for the heavy dialogue. So let's average that to 75. And what we end up with is about 250 to 260 words per page. With only 401 pages, that is a really quite short book. We're probably looking at about 100,000 words, which is the same length as The Hunger Games, which I happen to know because I've looked it up, is almost exactly 100,000 words. In fact, Suzanne Collins has worked hard to make all three of those books within 200 words of 100,000 words. So yeah, it is impressive how close she got, because that's the new writer's guide for what is the best-selling length of a book. So, about 100,000 words. For reference, that will take the average person around 7 hours to read. So, you could easily read this in 4 sittings. If you're a heavy reader and you read for longer than an hour and a half to 2 hours per sitting, you could get through this in a long weekend. For a slow reader like myself, it's maybe a week's worth of reading. So, heavily recommend this. This is the right kind of book to bridge the gap between YA and adult. It's the right kind of book to get a contemporary reader into sci-fi. It's a quick read. It's got a decent writing style that's breezy and simple to get through without being too simplistic that it becomes insulting or drab. It's got an entertaining story. It's got a great premise. The romance and the characters are written well, whilst it can be a little bit reductive and a little bit simplistic in its exploration of the concept. And if it had explored it deeper for a sci-fi fan like myself, I think it would have been a lot more enjoyable. For someone starting out, this is a near perfect book. For me personally, it is a book I enjoyed, not one I'm likely to revisit much. It would be a solid 3.5-star book for me. Now, that's a low rating by most people's standards, I'm aware of this. But, for me, I operate on an out of 10 system, which I will put another video up in the near future explaining my 10-point system. So, a 10-point system can be compared to a star system quite easily, with 3.5 being a 7 out of 10. Now, a 7 out of 10 is not a bad rating. A 7 out of 10 is a good rating. So, 3.5 stars, that is a damn good rating. Anything from 3 stars up is a positive rating for me. 3 stars is a recommended book. 5 stars will almost never appear. If I give a 5-star, it's probably in line for one of the best books of the year. So be aware of that. 5 stars will be as rare as chicken teeth on this channel. So yeah. I recommend this book. I think everyone will enjoy it, but I recommend it especially to people new to sci-fi who want to try it out, who have experienced YA or contemporary adult novels. This will take you the next step. You'll be wanting to read more sci-fi. This will whet your appetite. I think it's a damn good book. So give it a try, and if you're interested, you can give it a try by winning a copy from my Discord. So, I'll see you in the next review. Until then, this was a lot of fun. Bye.